auth, and then, so we're going to do auth setup. And the way we're choosing to do this is using a provider. Because if you think about it, like our auth, we might have certain pages that we want to be able to go to if our users logged in or not on the front end. And we might want to show like, we might want that state, like, do we have a user for different components? You could imagine like on my home, I might want to like say like hello user.name, like email or something. And my nav bar, I might want to do something like, I'm just going to do this as a comment for now, but like, if we have a user, we might want to have a different like nav, right? If we have a user, I don't want to say log in or log out. I want to say, or log in and register. I want to say log out. If we don't have a user, then we want to say log in, log out, or log in, register. So the point here is like, I'm going to have this user state that I'm going to be sharing across multiple components. So that's like a good use case for a provider. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this an Auth Provider. Because this one, why not a data provider? I mean, I can call this whatever. I'm calling this Auth Provider because this is going to be providing, this auth information, which is going to be information about the logged in user. Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling this out. So, and this is, so we have talked about providers before. This is going to be, but it's been a while, so it's a review of providers with this. So we have like, this is all part of like the create context from React. What we do is just kind of show how we're going to do this. So I'm going to import React from React. When we do this, we create a context. I'm going to call this auth context. React dot create context. The create context is going to give us back an object that has a consumer and a provider. You can think of this, a way to, consume the data, and the way to provide the data. And with hooks, we can also use context hooks, with the context as a new way. I'm going to say new and better way to consume data. Let's kind of look at what this means. So we're actually going to export this because this is how we're doing this part. We'll eventually use this auth context with the use context hook to consume the data. So this is why we're exporting this. I can also do, oh wait, I can also say const auth consumer equals, use my, because remember how I said that create context returns a consumer and a provider. Set that equal to the consumer. This is another way to, get the data. But yeah, but now we want to, create our provider. This is going to be our React component here. So I'm going to call this Auth Provider. It's just going to be a React component. So what at the core, what we do here is we return our auth context dot provider. Remember I said our create context method returns a object that has a consumer and a provider. We're storing this to this variable called auth context, which we can actually export. We can export the consumer, and then down here we can use the provider to, pass it some data. Now this is going to wrap my app so I can call that, like I'm going to get this is going to wrap the app. So I'm going to render this within my, I'm going to render my children of this component within this provider. And then I can export default my auth provider. So this auth provider uses my auth context.provider where I can give this value. This is the way how I'm going to share data and even ways to update that data to my app. So what I do next is in my index.js, I then use that provider. So just as a review, so now I have this auth provider. Now my app is, being rendered within this. So that's it's essentially just throws my app, all of my app right there. But I do that with children, with the children prop. But now this is all set up. So in my home.js, like I kind of said in here, now I have a way to consume the data. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at it. Let's just do a simple use case. Let's say let value equal use context. So I need to import these. So we grab our hook and then we grab our auth context. Now I can just JSON.stringify this value. Maybe I'll just call, instead of calling this value, let's call this auth. So notice the value here, it's an object with the key X, the value 1. So if I go to my home, there's this home component is now consuming that data being provided by my providers. So eventually what I'm going to want to do is like have a user inside of here. So now this object that has like a user, and I can then grab the actual email. So on the home, I could do this is going to be auth.user.email. Okay. So this is all just hard coded. I want to show you one other way to do this consumer, the older way. I'm going to call this home.js or home class.js. Let's make a class component. Remember, with a class, we extend React.component, which means I need to import React. Okay, it's not automatically doing it. Import React from React. And I need my render method. So I just kind of want to do exactly what I did here. So I'm going to do this, home class. All of that. I'm going to grab my auth. Cool. Oh yeah, that's a little weird. So get rid of that. Let export default class. I need to like import this hook in this context. What else do I need to do? I think that is it. Oh, let's set this up in my nav, like in my index, or sorry, this would be in my app.js. Let's call this home class. And this one I'll just say like, that's a home path. So those are different. And then my nav bar, let's create a link there, home class. And just before, I'm just going to do this, like before we do any of this stuff, let's just get this working. Home class. Auth is not defined. Oh, wait, I did that in the wrong spot. Class. Okay, so I go to my home class. There we go. Just set up that component. Just kind of doing the exact same thing I did with my functional component, just writing it as a class component. So now in this home class component, I want to go ahead and, grab that state from my provider. Auth is not defined. I mean, it's saying this is not defined. Doesn't like that. I don't know, let's like maybe like, I don't know, use this outside of here. But what's the issue here? Why is this not going to work? I'm trying to use use context is a hook. Why is there no way I can get this to work? What are like the rules of hooks? No one knows?
Is it that they have to be run at the top level? They can't be nested?
Yeah, there is that one. Well, that's yeah, one of them like can't be at the top level. I'm like having a hard time. Like if I do that, auth equals use like that, I don't have a syntax error, but now it's saying it's not defined. Oh, there's one huge other issue.
Because you're in a class component.
Yes, that's it. I'm in a class component, so I cannot use a hook. There's just no way around it. So I can't use this hook. Well, how do I get this data then from my how do I get the data from my consumer? Well, there's another way to do it. As I said in here, this is the new and better way to consume data. But yeah, there is some limitations, like, since it's a hook, we know it has to be from a functional component. So let's say, yeah, we do have a class component, and I don't want to rewrite this because I'm lazy or for some other reason. I can't use a hook. So there's another way to get this data. So I'm going to use the consumer. So I'm going to import my consumer. All right. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to call this just connected home class. And what this one's going to do is, and just kind of like follow along here, is, so this is just a React component, which is going to wrap this home class component. So return home class component. But what I can do here is I can use my auth consumer and wrap that in my auth consumer class. And this one, my auth consumer can give it a function that has that value. That is the data. So what I want to do is I want to pass down props that was given to me, but I also want to pass down this value. And then I'm going to export default this connected home class. Let's call this connected home class. All right.
Is this just for demo, or why would you have like a class component for the home page also?
Well, what I'm showing is I have a Auth Provider. I want to grab this email in this home component. but it's a class. Like right in my home.js, this is how I did it. I use my use context hook and I use that auth context. So I want to show how I do the same thing in a class component. Well, I can't use a hook. I can't use this use context hook because I'm in a class component. So instead of using, instead of using here, using use context, auth context, I'm going to wrap my component in my auth consumer. My auth consumer, and this is just how the consumer works, is I can give it a function. This is just a function that has this value parameter, and then I can return a React component. I'm just going to return this home class component. Let's ignore this props for now. I think let's not get confused with that right now. What I'm going to do is I have this auth consumer that I'm exporting from right here. Like this is my auth context.consumer being used right here. So this is like a special React thing that I'm getting from that create context. This, I can pass it a function who's going to give me a parameter whose value is actually going to be, this object or whatever I threw inside of here. I don't actually have to call that value. I could call it X, but we'll call it value. So what is this ... value? Like, what does this, like, don't think about the consumer. When I do like ... to a React component, what am I doing? Like we've done this before.
Like spreading over it.
Yeah, so if I had some object like let, X equals ID1 and name equals Tony, I could say like here, I could say ID equals X.ID and name equals X.name, right? Or I could just go like this. I could just go ... X. Really what I could do here is I could say, this would be like very confusing to do it, or not confusing, but like harder to do it this way. What I could say here is I could say something like email equals the value user.email, I think, but I just want to spread out over the value because this is just a lot cleaner. So I'm really just passing props to this component. So now instead of this being auth, let's see what this dot props is. This dot props dot user email. There's my class, hello test@test.com. There's my user, test@test.com. Or there's that, like, there's my props. Let's see here, my index.js or my app. Let's say this one had a like just like a yo prop. I'm giving my home class a yo prop whose value is yo-yo. I think so. In my home class, if I refresh, well, how come I don't see that yo prop in here? Well, that's because in this connected class, like I'm not passing that down, because really what this in my index.js or my app.js, remember, I'm really exporting the exported class. So what I need to do to pass these props down is in my home class, I take these props and like, I'm just gonna pass those on down to my home class. And there's that yo prop. So this is just saying, hey, you know, this is a React component and has props who's rendering the home class component. So just take whatever props was given to this and just pass them on directly down to my home class. And also take that value object from my provider and pass all that data down. So which way is easier?
With the hook.
Yeah. Yeah, the hook is super nice. Yeah, for maybe some reason it's a class component, or you can still do this with a functional component. I don't know why you would, but you can. But I just wanted to explain, this is like another way to get the data, like, you know, if it's a class component. But now we can see like this auth, using this auth context and our use context hook. See, that is new and better way to consume that data. All right. So let's keep going though, because like right now we're just hard coding the user. Let's actually you know, create the state and have this actually create a user in our database. So for this, I'm going to grab my use state hook. And inside of here, I'm going to create some state user and set user. So we're no longer going to hard code this user. We're just going to use that object. And that can be equal to use state. By default, I'm going to want this to be maybe null. Okay, and the reason I'm having this be null is because I do definitely want this to be null, because a null user is a like not auth user, like another way, not logged in. You know, if I have a user, they will be authenticated. All right. So I'm going to want to do 3 functions inside of here too. I'm going to want to do a register, because this is where we're going to actually handle registering a user. We're going to also handle logging in and log out. So let's just do these one at a time. Let's do a const handle register. Okay. So this function is going to, kind of expect to be given a user from like the form. So this method's going to be called on submit, on our register page. All right. So this is going to be a sync. And we can do like a try catch. Let res equal await Axios dot. Okay, so what is our call? What's our, we didn't really define this. I mean, we did when we created this devise user. Like, what's the path? Like, what is the request for this? So I think a good way to do this is either look at the docs, or even better, since we namespaced it with API, this is where I'm going to want to check my routes. Rails S-PE 3001. So I'm going to want it's like a register. I'm going to want to be creating a new user. So probably registrations create. So a post to API auth, create a new registration. So that's going to be my path. And that's going to take this to the device token auth controller to the registrations create method, which is actually already done for us. We don't need to write that. But I do need to follow this path. So I'm going to do a post request. /API/auth. And then I'm going to want to pass the user. And then for now, we're just going to console.log the response. And then if there's an error, we can console log the error and do an alert. All right. So what I'm going to eventually want to do is set user here, but we're going to wait. So for now, I just want to export this function. I'm just going to throw this on my provider. So now my provider now has that user, and then it has this function handle register. Cool. So let's go to my form. So this register. So this is going to be a form. Input. Oh, so what we need to register a user, and with devise token auth, these are going to be required. So we're going to need a email. So this will be an input. Value equals email. Change equals, we'll take our event. E dot or set email. I'm going to have to create these states. I don't have that. E dot target dot value. This const email set email. So I'm going to have some email state and I'm going to have some password state. This is not needed, but nice for UX is if I did something like a confirm password. Just to make sure that, you know, the password they typed in was the one they think. So we're not going to do this right now just to, because it's not needed. But, you know, when you go log in at a site, sometimes most of the time they make you enter in your password twice, just to make sure you entered in like the right one. But for this, we'll just have an email and password. And then we can have our button. We'll just have to say register. And then for our form, we can have a on submit. Our handle submit function. Let's handle submit. This can take an event. We'll do an e.prevent default. I want that handle register function. How do I get it? Well, that's pretty easy with my use context hook. I just say, hey, use context. I want my handle, or let's grab my auth context. And then I should just right here be able to do auth dot handle register. And pass that my email and password. Very nice there. And then let's actually need to call that prevent function, prevent default. All right, a lot of code here, but I mean, essentially, I mean, we've done all of this. We just have a form with two inputs. We have our handle submit where we prevent the default, and then we're going to use our context to grab that handle register, and then we'll pass it that user information. So I'll just say, and I'm just going to tell you this with devise, token auth. There are some like some backend validations. Email must be an email, like a valid email. And unique. Password must be greater than 6. It's greater than, equal to 6 characters. So you're not going to be able to register a user if you don't have a valid and unique email and if their password is not 6 or greater. So let's go test this out. Axios is not defined. So my Auth Provider. Let's import Axios. lovely register form. So I can do something like test.com, give it a valid password. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just throw my inspector up to see if this works. Oh, I'm getting a 200 status. If I go to my data, let's get. So notice here, this whole object right here is the response.data. So I'm going to drill into that. There's also another, well, here's the response.data. There's also another data key in there. So it's res.data.data. And if I look at that, what does that have? It has an ID and like a updated at and created at. So that was actually saved to my database. So I've now created a user in my database. So I could go ahead and like do a rel c, do a user.all. There it is. Let's do user.first. There's my first user, the email. There's the email. Let's do password. Wait, why is my password nil? Didn't I do a password? It's actually not on there. Encrypted password. So there's the password. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why is, any ideas why you think the password is not stored on the database?
Probably not that secure.
Yeah, it's very unsecure. If think if someone hacked your database and they got a whole bunch of like lists of emails and passwords, then they could go to like a whole bunch of websites, because most people don't. You know, a lot of people just use the same email and passwords for a whole bunch of websites. So then they could go just, yeah, probably go hack a whole bunch of other websites and like log in with your credentials. So just, it's a way to protect your users. So if your website does get hacked, you're not storing that information. It's also like, you don't want like an engineer at your company to like go in and be able to, you know, maybe easily like tell their password. They can see, like, they'll be able to see the encrypted password, but so just like a tiny bit on encryption, like a simplified level, just like what it is. So let's say like I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what happens is this runs through some, you know, encryption algorithm, and, you know, pops out this number or that string. So there's a lot of different ways this works or how this can work, but with like encrypting like something like a password to like this key, this is what's called like a one-way function. Like it's very easy to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You run it through this encryption function and you're going to get this every single time. You're going to get this string every single time. But if you have this string or like this character, it's like almost impossible to go back. The reason why I say it can depend. It can be easy or hard to go back. Like it is really meant to be very like pretty much essentially impossible to go backwards. Like you can't take this and figure out that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But there is a way you can figure out that this password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because what you can do is you can take a list, you can figure out like, so since this encryption function always is going to give you the same thing, the same string, what hackers will do is they might get this key, they might figure out what it's encrypted, and what they can do is they can go through like a list of common passwords and run it through the encryption function. And, they'll get the results. So they could be like, run password through that encryption function. And then, that would give them some random. And then, they might do like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then that would give them another random one. And then finally they test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then boom, they get a match. Then they alert it. And then they're like, oh, like this is the password. There's like other things that go, like there's things called like salt. You can like salt passwords that make this harder to do and things like that. So, but it's one of the reasons people tell you like, don't use simple passwords. Because if you use a simple passwords, there is a way to kind of maybe go back and try to figure it out. Because they can go run like, they can go test like millions and billions of passwords, run it through the encryption function and match them.
Yeah, I know it's not entirely what we're doing, but there is a website you can go to. And my uncle works in IT and he uses this a lot. And you put your password in and it'll tell you how long it would take a hacker to break it. So you can like make strong passwords and stuff like that.
Yeah, because those are cool to look at, because these things like can be like running through a list of like common passwords. It's not even common passwords. You can just like, they can create a program that like, tries AAAA and then AAAB. Like, so they can get a very fast computer and try all of this stuff out. So it's generally why like when you want a password, it's like you want something long and just random. That's going to be a very hard password to break. If you do have a password like that, I'm sure like I go run that through that website, that'd be like pretty hard one to break. Mainly because it's long. But anyway, that's just so I kind of just wanted to go over that. So when you go to your database, you understand like the password's not going to be stored there. It's going to be encrypted. You might want to do that with something, say like a credit card number. You might not want to store the credit card number. You might want to encrypt it. Stuff like that. Okay, but we do have a logged in user. And also, where would I see this? I want to see if I can find where I kind of just want to show one thing. So we have this was our response. Here's our auth call. I just kind of want like behind the scenes, like in our response, we're getting back a token. So we're going to use this eventually, but I kind of just wanted to show it. This is like this token we're getting back from our backend that we're going to need to send with like subsequent API calls that prove we're like logged in. So this access token, this is very like, this is important. This is like, you know, this is the token we're talking about. And this is the thing we're exchanging between the Rails and the front end. That is like, if I don't have this, I'm not going to be able to get data or create data or that kind of thing. And then I can give this to the Rails backend and they're going to, like Rails is going to know, oh, hey, this is, you know, test@test.com user. But we'll get into that later. Let's see, what time is it? Let's maybe do login really quick. And so one thing I might want to do after I register. So this could be, this would be when I successfully register. So this is going to be my auth provider. Is I could, oh wait, hold on. I want to set my user. That'd be nice, right? To res.data.data. And then let's, so for this, I'm going to use our use navigate because I'm going to want to navigate here. So let's grab import use navigate from React Router DOM. My const navigate equals use navigate. And for here, once I log in, let's just take them to the home page, which would just be slash. So yeah, let's do test@test.com. Let's re-register. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go to my console. So now I'm getting an error. Any ideas what this error is about? Email has already been taken. I didn't use a unique email. So this is something that might, you know, you might have this is like a valid error. Like you might think your app's broken, but it's actually working. I need to register with unique emails. We didn't do anything to set that up. That was the device token auth, but, and then I could show you like, if I do 1, 2, 3 and I register, that's another error. Let's look at that auth, the preview. Password is too short, minimum 6 characters, 4, 5, 6. There we go. That was successful. Now in my provider, I set my user to that res.data.data, and then we navigate to our homepage. So what I might also want to do is in my nav bar. Well, I don't want to say log in and register because now I'm logged in. So what I could do in my nav bar is, you know, I want to do these steps. Like if I have a user, let's have this stuff. If we don't, we want this stuff. First of all, let's grab our user. So I'm going to need to grab my context and my use context hook. So const auth equals use context. Get that from React. Pass it the auth context. And then, yeah, for here, I'm gonna maybe just throw this in a div. I'll show you why in 1 second. We can clean this up later, but do a nice little like left and right menu. So for here, I'm gonna just call a function called render right nav. So let's go ahead and define this render right nav. So this is where I can say like, hey, if I have a user, I'm going to say link logout. And for now, I'm going to say like to do. This isn't really working, but you know, we can kind of leave that note and let's return that. If not, I can return, do this as a fragment since there's going to be 2 of them. Link to login and a link to register. And then for this, if I wanted to like just quickly like maybe make this a little neater, I could do like a display flex and then justify content. Let's do space around. Let's see if that separates them into left and right. I might need to do a little more, but I think that'll get close. So user is not defined. Oh yeah, because here I did user. Remember user is a key on my value. Like this whole value, so that whole thing I'm calling auth is going to be this object with user and handle property. So I can't say in my nav bar, I can't say user, I need to say auth.user. Or I could destructure my user off of that like that. That would also be valid. But for now, I'll just do auth.user. That is pretty, okay, so I'm gonna switch one thing. That should be space between. Okay. So now I'm logged in. So now it says logged out because I have a user. Now something that will fix tomorrow, if I refresh this page, it breaks it. Why does it break it? It shouldn't break it. Cannot read properties email. So once again, this is the like it's trying to read email of null. So in my, because I'm going to my home class, and I'm trying to grab this user, which is not defined now because I'm not logged in. So for now, let's do this. If we don't have auth.user, and we'll also say this is as a to-do, like should not be able to come here. Like redirect. Should not be able to come here because like they're not logged in. And then we'll like redirect to login page. But this is a to-do. We're going to do this in a different way. I'm just kind of showing this. Because I'm not logged in. We might want to have a page that we shouldn't be able to come to. but we'll do this tomorrow. But let's go to the register. Let's register as a user, test2 at test.com. Now I can't, like, it redirects there. I have the user, there it is. But yeah, if I refresh, that like destroys my user. So there's a lot more we have to do tomorrow, but this gets us started. I think as maybe a bonus for today, you can maybe try doing the login, even though we haven't done it. It's going to be similar to this one, to the register, but I think this is quite a bit to already get set up. Any questions on this? I'm going to.
So is our homework just going to be like starting on our starter project?
Yeah.
Just kind of like doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be the same thing. So you're going to start from scratch. Because yeah, by next week, what you should have is you should have a project that you can clone down from GitHub. That's going to have like authentication set up and like React router and maybe, maybe like a data provider or two. And you're just kind of good to go, start working.
Okay, sweet.
Because even if like, I should try, like, even if I were like, I know this because I've taught this quite a bit, like, so I could almost probably do this from memory and like I could go through it pretty quick. Like this would take me a while to do because there's just a lot of stuff to build out. Like there's quite a bit of code going on here already. We're not even done. We're like halfway done. And that just gives us like a basic way to log in. Like you want to be able to get your homework done. So, or like if this was a hackathon and you wanted to have like authentication, you'd be spending like, 3 hours splitting up the work to get this done. So cool. Did I push that? Yeah, that is pushed up to GitHub. So all that code's there. And yeah, this is essentially going to be the same thing. I think the only thing that might be different is how you choose to do it. Like I'm kind of showing you a tiny bit different way of like, at least with like React router and like the folder structure. But as far as like the authentication stuff, that's going to look very much the same. And we'll finish with that tomorrow because we're really not, we kind of just touched the surface. We just got our register working. There's a lot more we need to do on the front end and on the back end. So I haven't even shown you like how do we like authenticate on the back end. So that'll be tomorrow. Cool. Well, let's come back at 2:10 and yeah, have a good lunch, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.